Welcome! This video contains an introduction, an interview so you can gain deeper understanding of the subject from spirit level, and a group frequency calibration so you can start to clear the frequency distortion patterns around this topic. Enjoy! Hi everyone, this is Karen Cheong, and I'm here with my co-host Dennis Kelly. You likely have noticed there is growing polarization happening on the planet. There is growing disparity between dark and light, between left and right. There is more fear, intolerance, and instability. Why is this happening? Today we're going to be talking about this from a higher perspective. After the discussion, we're going to wrap it up with a group frequency calibration to begin to help you clear your distortion patterns around this topic. So let's get started. Dennis?
You know, Karen, I think we can all relate to exactly what it is that you're talking about, because as an individual, we can really feel this chaos, this pulling apart. Mm-hmm. And whether it's the government or the weather or just, our relationships with other people, just a lot of fear, a lot of concerns. And so I'm just curious, how do you see that? Is that going to be kind of the way that life is going to be for us from now on?
Well, this polarization to which I refer to, and now you have, is a result of a couple of things that are happening on a greater level that we can't see. So it's causing a lot of concern and a lot of fear for a lot of people. But once you understand it from a higher perspective, you'll realize that there is actually a greater purpose. So we just can't tell necessarily because we're in it. So what's happening, at least for the past 2 years or a little bit more, has been that there are waves of what I'll call a very highly vibrating consciousness that are sweeping through the all that is. So it's not just affecting Earth and humanity, it's affecting everything that is. Okay? So everything right now, in this particular moment in time, is being buoyed up in terms of consciousness. So we're going to go really super big picture in this conversation, just to prepare everybody for this. Okay. It's not, because it's a much bigger, broader view. So as a result, these consciousness waves are coming through and are clearing out from our realm. So let's just we're talking about humanity now, and on the earth in this third dimensional reality. They're clearing out the lower density vibrations that exist in the collective in order for consciousness to rise. Okay, that's what they're doing. So as a result, it creates a lot of instability. It creates a lot of what seems like chaos. It creates even more polarization, because in that polarization, those extremes have to become sort of loud and then break off. So what's happening is, as I mentioned, these waves have been coming through, and they've gotten more and more intense in the past couple of years. And they'll last for anywhere between a week to 2 weeks to a few more even. It depends how big the wave is, how sustained it is, and how much we can take as humanity, really, honestly, to some degree. So what's happening is that we're feeling them for longer periods of time. And the period of May, June, I'm going to talk about time because this is not going to be released immediately. So in the period of May, June 2019, and because we're in July, that was one of the most sustained waves that we have experienced, and the most intense in terms of its intensity. And so if during that period of time, you notice that you were having a lot of difficulty sleeping, a lot of difficulty focusing, you couldn't remember things very well. Even though you're normally a very organized person. Time got a little bit wonky with you, and it was difficult, and you were getting really irritable with people for no particularly good reason, a little bit more on edge than usual. That's because you are feeling these purity waves that are coming through. So as we have these purity waves, they have been increasing in intensity, as I've mentioned. And feel free to, I know I'm talking for a while here, so hopefully this all makes sense. But in any case, these waves have been coming in, and let's just imagine that they are clearing, if you can imagine like a beaker, right? A beaker with very, very different levels of viscosity, a beaker filled with liquid with varying levels of viscosity. Okay, and at the bottom, the heaviest, more dense layers like sludge. It's almost like solid, right? And as you move up through the layers of the liquid, it gets more and more clear. Does that make sense? It becomes less sludgy, right? More and more liquid, okay, in form. So what's happening is that these consciousness waves are pulling out the bottom layers of those sludgy things. And that is why we're having, it's like the whole planet is detoxing. That's why we're having more violence, more, like when I've talked about detox before, I've mentioned that when we personally detox, what happens is the distortion patterns leave us and we see them as if they're separate from us, because they are now separate from us for the first time. And so we can really see how intense they were, right? Because for a long time we just thought they were us. And so it's almost like they seem louder to us, or they get more intense. The same thing is happening, but as a collective. So these layers of the sludge are coming away. These waves have been, let's just say, this is a pretend scale. Yeah. Pretend scale, right, for purpose of discussion. Let's just say there's like 100% amount of distortion that needs to be removed from the planet in order for consciousness to fully rise, right? Let's just imagine. It's not that, but because I'm an art student, that's how my brain works. Okay, so let's imagine that every wave that has come through has been, in terms of its intensity, less than a percentage, okay? In terms of the amount of the density level that it removes from the collective. Small. It's like chipping away, okay? Yep. And it's been getting progressively larger. So let's just say the first wave took off like 1/108th, like 1/108, like very small, right? And then as we've gotten more and more of these, and we can take more and more as a collective, the amount that can be removed is proportionally greater. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So the wave that happened in May, June of 2019 was almost an entire percent, right? Compared to a very small fraction, a percent is actually a lot. Okay, so that's why it felt so intense to a lot of us, and it was just such a hard time. Yeah, a lot of people got sick during that time. A lot of people crossed over in that time. So anyway, it's a very unstable feeling time. All right, there is a wave of consciousness that is coming, the end of summer, beginning of fall, which is the most we will have seen to date. And so that one, instead of being like at a 1%, will clear like 10. So that's a massive jump. Right? So instead of just clearing 1%, it's going to clear 10%. So that is a huge removal of density at one go. And so it's going to feel, for a lot of people, very destabilizing. But what will happen as a result, right, is it's like if we did a massive purge. So these very thick layers of greed, of control or abuse, or violence, that type of thing, that stuff is going to be pulled away so that they don't exist at the same level as it does now. Now, it's hard to understand that, and what's going to happen is once it passes, we're all going to kind of forget, because it's going to become our new normal, that was so extreme back then. But it's going to be, that's a huge deal, because that's a massive shift in terms of how we as a collective experience consciousness. Because we don't, as consciousness rises, all that stuff is not relevant. Like, why would you need to be really greedy and grab for more things when you are in abundance? Like, that's part of the new consciousness, is that there is no sense of scarcity, or at least not at the same level that we have now. So I don't need to take something from you for me to have more. I'm in abundance, so why would I do that?
I have to stop.
Please. You. I've been waiting. There's been a buildup of questions that I know I've been waiting.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So
please.
Yeah. So you were at 30,000 feet, and but what I picked up is this sounds like good news.
It is.
It's the fact of the matter is that as we go through it, it's not much fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like a cleanse.
But the question I've got is, I as an individual, and you're saying these waves will continue, and will get stronger. So I as an individual, is there anything I can do to prepare or take advantage of, or be in a position to raise with that level of consciousness that's happening in the universe?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to answer that in a number of ways. I'm going to answer it from spirit perspective, and I'm going to answer it from physical, okay? So this new wave that's coming through, I have been analogizing it to a tsunami, okay? Because we're going from clearing 1% to clearing 10. That's a massive jump. So if you, again, this is a false, like I'm just using it for conversation as an example. Let's imagine the amplitude of the wave that happened in May, June was 1,000. The amplitude of the wave that's coming is like 10,000. That's huge. It's a massive differential. As a result, it's much more intense. That means that for those of us who can crest that wave, so I'm going to back up. Each wave has a bandwidth. It's like music. It's like a note. It has a low and a high. Okay, just like a note has a low and a high pitch. Yeah. Each wave has a low and a high. It's simply an amplifier, right? So if let's, for example, you are naturally resonating at a 3, okay? Because you by yourself on your own resonate at a +3, okay? And you have the ability to access the higher bandwidth of that, like the higher note of that range, right? Of that wave that comes through. So let's just say that the magnitude of the wave that happened in May, June was 1,000. You would be at 3,000 at the end of that wave. Does that make sense? You yourself, if you can take advantage of that higher part of that bandwidth, would be amplified to a 3,000 in terms of your own frequency. If you are at a -2, for example, because it's an amplifier and there's a low note to this wave, it will also distort to the same degree as it amplifies. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you're at a -2 in this past wave of 1,000, let's just imagine, for May, June, you would be at a -2,000. So this is where people start to have more drama. They're more angry, they're more violent, they're more pissed off. They can't get out of like the rut, and it seems like everything's against them. It's because it's getting more distorted. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. This new wave that's coming, right, as I said, is an amplitude of 10,000. This is for conversation only. I'm not saying it's relative exactly. Yeah. It's an amplitude of 10,000. That means it's like a tsunami. This is not just like a big, those big wave surfers, right? Those big wave surfers, like they tow them out there and they like crest and they surf on these massive waves at Mavericks or whatever. And it's really spectacular and kind of terrifying to watch at the same time. So this is like a tsunami, this wave that's coming of consciousness, where the amplitude is really high. For those of us, so I'm getting to your question. Yep. So I know you asked a question, I'm getting to it. So for those of us who want to take advantage of that wave, so what can I do? Yeah. It is really important to continue to clear distortion patterns as much as you can during this time. So you can listen to these GFCs at the end, they're free at the end of these video series. You can do group frequency calibrations. You can listen to the Sedona event because that event was all about preparing for this wave. So whatever it is that you want to do, clearing will help you. The reason clearing is so important is because you want to be able to, or at least I would want to be able to surf that wave. Yeah. Because you're either going to surf that wave or you're going to get sucked under the undertow. Those are the kind of your two options at this point, right? Because it's so powerful and we're all going to experience it. It's just a matter of how you will experience it. So if you're surfing a tsunami, if you get distracted, if your surfboard has a crack in it, if you lose your balance, you're going to fall into that wave. So that's an analogy for the more distortions you can release, the more internal strength you have, the more you can access from a spirit and physical level, the higher note in that wave, the higher part of that bandwidth. So you can use it as a springboard to leverage you up and to amplify you into a higher level of resonance. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you want to be able to do that. Yep. So that's one answer to your question. It was a long answer, but I think I got there. The second thing that you could do on a physical level, in addition to listening to whatever level of resource you have access to, is to really be mindful of your physical body. Because as I have said many times, we are spiritually ascending, we must also physically ascend. You must bring your body with you. So as a result, take care of it. When you have this level of frequencies running through the physical reality, it's literally like getting hit by a wave of water. I don't know if you've ever been caught by a wave of water on the beach. It's terrifying. It sucks. And been taken down. It feels like you're going to die. You're like, that's it, I'm dead. You get tumbled in the waves and it feels terrible. Yeah, just wipes you. So similarly, because there's so much happening that we can't see on the etheric or the spirit level, our physical bodies are getting beat up. That's why we're feeling fatigued, we're getting sick, whatever, yeah? Or we're feeling, a lot of people are getting things like tinnitus, like they're hearing ringing in their ears, or their balance is off, or they're feeling like racing in their hearts. It's because their physical bodies are trying to shift up. Some people are experiencing physical panic attacks because their bodies are trying to shift up into this new frequency vibration. okay? And they're struggling to do it.
And it gets kind of scary.
And it's totally terrifying, of course. It can be. Yeah, it's overwhelming. If you have no context for this, you're just like, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and so am I. This is not good.
So I think that's the beauty of what you're doing here is you're giving us some insight about, otherwise I take this very personal.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
What's going on with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
from a physical perspective, to really take care of yourself, so to really be mindful of how much sugar and caffeine you're eating, because I know that we all don't sleep enough, and I get that, for different reasons, because we're working too much or we're watching TV or whatever it is, but we're not sleeping enough. So we use sugar and caffeine as a crutch to make us more awake in our days, okay, or just to cope. When you eat a lot of sugar and caffeine, it actually pings you in and out of time. It not for everybody, for most people, it spins you up and speeds you out of time and then drops you and then you're behind time. So I know that may not make sense to anybody, but what I'm telling you is it pulls you in and out of time, the eternal now, which makes it difficult for you to create, and it's very disempowering and causes a lot of anxiety. You may not connect why that's happening, but it does. So be mindful of what you're eating and what you're drinking, right? And those artificial sweeteners, and we all know what those are, they're not good for you. Like when I scan people on spirit perspective, on spirit level, and I can tell right away, I'm like, that is almost, for some people, it's extremely toxic for their system. Not for everyone, for many people. Okay. The other thing is drink more water. Now, I know everyone knows they should drink more water. I mean, I think everybody talks about drink more water, be more hydrated. But because of the way that our physical bodies are constructed, from a spirit perspective, if you are dehydrated, it is harder for you to take in the amplitude of frequencies that are coming through the earth. You're more hydrated, you are water, not iced tea, not juice, whatever, water. The more water, coconut water is fine, the more water you take in, and the more hydrated you are, the more you can allow your body to take in these frequencies. It's about allowing a lot of ascension. People don't realize this has to do with the physical body being able to take in a greater bandwidth of frequencies from low to high. Yeah? Okay. So that, and as much as you can, sleep. So even if you're not sleeping through the night, because a lot of people during this time, it's an accelerating time. If you're waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning and you can't sleep, get up, meditate. You're being woken up because this is a time of acceleration. So believe me, this has been happening to me a lot. So I'm physically tired. I mean, I'm just like, really? But yes, really, get up, meditate, right? So that's what's happening. And then use napping throughout the day to help you. Because then you're sleeping, but not all at one go. You're just sort of like sleeping in bits, So sleep. So those are my 4 biggest tips. And if you can get into a large body of water, like an ocean or a clean lake or like a river or a clean stream or whatever, that is also helpful. It's not required, but helpful.
So the bottom line is this large wave is coming through late summer, early fall, 2019. So the fact of the matter is, we're not going to stop it.
No. No, we're not.
So we as individuals have to decide what's our game plan.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is that this body is just critical to our success.
Yeah.
To be in a position to really truly take advantage of this wave. This is exciting news.
Oh, it's really exciting.
This is huge.
Yeah. And it's funny because some people ask me, who's generating this wave? I'm like, it's just part of the divine order. And every certain period of time, there are these waves that come through to lift consciousness. They just have to be long, 2,600, 5,200, sometimes longer than that, periods, depending on what dimensional level we're talking about and whatever. It's too long of I don't need to muddle this conversation. But what I'm telling you is that in certain periods of time, these happen. Like I said, it's not just on Earth. It's not just humanity. It's not like it's not like a being is creating this. This is the consciousness wave through the all that is to raise consciousness of the all that is. So it's not like someone is generating it. It's not like that. It's coming from a much higher source.
And don't you have a sense or a feeling that maybe at this time the human body is going to be taken to a level it's never been taken to before?
Yes, in terms of its ability to handle a greater bandwidth of frequencies. And for those of us who are moving first, that is an extraordinary challenge, because what's happened before is that consciousness has not been in a level where we can reach these levels of consciousness and stay in the body. It requires that we pop out of the body, that we leave the density. Okay? And but now what's happening is, because consciousness is coming up generally in the collective, and there are others who are moving up in terms of their frequency vibration, that what can happen is there's enough stability so that those who go first in terms of their resonance, they have more support and they can stay in their bodies. So what I'll just say is this, to back out of that, just in terms of the collective. The more of us that can surf this wave, the easier it is on the collective, because we are one. So the more of us that do the work, who can stay on top of this wave, the easier it is for the collective. And I say that because people are like, well, what about my kids and stuff? I'm like, focus on you, you do your work, and what will happen is a collective will be buoyed. So the ones of us who move first, in terms of having more capacity for having greater levels of frequencies being held by the physical, it helps the collective, because it allows that to then set into the collective so that others can do the same.
You know, these are extremely, very powerful, exciting times.
Oh, it is.
So thank you for all the insight, Karen. It helps to have kind of a sense of truly what's going on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Karen, could you help me? I hear so often when I look at your video or your website, GFC. Exactly what is that?
A GFC is a group frequency calibration, which looks a lot like a guided meditation on a particular topic. And what I'm doing is I'm helping you to remove the distortion patterns of that particular topic. And because you're coming together as a mastermind in a group to connect to pure source even more and to clear the distortion patterns of this particular topic, what happens is a tremendous amount of momentum starts to happen because of the energetic of the entire group, and each individual is able to move faster and ascend higher than they could have on their own. Welcome everyone to the group frequency calibration for why polarization is happening on the planet. And I'll just call it instead preparation for the purity waves of consciousness. So we're going to first become very aware of our bodies. How are you holding your body right now? How is the weight distributed? In your body, and noticing your body's position in the room or the space that you're in relative to at least 3 inanimate objects. Doesn't matter what those objects are, just noticing your position vis-a-vis 3 inanimate objects. Good. So now becoming aware of the space between your belly button and the hollow of your throat. We're going to take a single breath together. So you're going to inhale as slowly as you can, and at the very top of your breath, you're going to hold your breath for as long as you think you can. And whenever you arrive at the time for your exhale, and it does not have to be at the sound of my voice, whenever you are ready, you're going to exhale all the air out of your lungs and hold your breath out for as long as you think you can. For those of you with very long breath, you can just pause this recording until you catch up, then restart. For the rest of us, once you complete your 3 breaths, please become aware of the space between your pubic bone and the base of your sternum. Yep. And just breathe normally here. And as we wait for the mastermind to gel, for those of you who are new, please note that I'm working on you in groups and in subgroups. And that I will be making noises on my end. So you likely will hear me yawn, even though I'm not tired, or exhale sharply, or even hum. And that is how I remove the distortion patterns at this time. I'm also working more and more in silence, and I likely will more in this particular group frequency calibration because the frequencies I'm working with are extremely high. So it requires that I'm working in silence. So just note that if you hear nothing, it's not because I've gone away somewhere. It's just that I'm working in silence. Continuing to keep your focus between your pubic bone and the base of your sternum. Good. Let's go ahead and ask ourselves the following question. How can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? That question, again, is how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And as you ask yourself that question, please imagine, sense, feel, or become aware of a brilliance deep, deep within your body that starts to bloom like a flower, and to expand through all the cells of your body, and to expand outward even more through the pores of your skin. Mm-hmm. Good. And for some of you, this expansion will become such that you expand all the way to the stars. For a couple of you, beyond that. And so if you do that, remember to keep some or part of your awareness on or in some part of your body, no matter how small. And on my end, I am helping to expand your bandwidth, your capacity for even higher level frequencies from pure source. Very good. Bringing your attention now, please, between your belly button and the hollow of your throat. Okay. All right, so it's a very broad spectrum of people in this mastermind. So some of you are brand new, and some of you have been doing this for a while, and you're very familiar with frequency work. It's a very broad spectrum. All right. So, and it doesn't matter. It's just an interesting spectrum. So, just focusing on the space between your belly button and the hollow of your throat. All right. So, this is, depending on the subgroup you're in, either a fear of, a resistance to, a discomfort with, or a worry, anxiety around what is coming next, because we don't know exactly what it will look like. Good. And if this is one of the first GFCs you've participated in, or one of your first encounters with frequency work, helping you keep pace with the rest of the group, because these frequencies we're working with are very high. So I'm just going to do something I don't normally do. I'm just going to help you keep up a little bit. You don't need to know what that means. Just know that it's happening. There we go. Good. Yep. So now becoming aware of the space between your belly button and your collarbones. Okay? And in fact, if you could imagine a line being drawn between your belly button and your collarbones through the center, keep your focus on that center line. Yep. So, with these purity waves, what's happening is that things that we feel hold us safe, things that we think are keeping us stable, will start to shift, and things will become much more fluid. So, for many of you, the more adaptable you are, the less you try to hold on to things, the better off you'll be. The more you try to hold on to something to make it seem more certain to you, the more you're going to entrench in your distortion patterns. Okay? So this is helping you to even more fully release these distortion patterns.
which have to do about certainty and rigidity and the idea of safety. It's not that it's really safe, it's just that you think you're more safe by holding everything firmly in the known. Okay? Now, for some of you who have more challenges with letting go, this is going to be harder for you in terms of your detox. So just be aware that that is the case, and to examine if that seems like you, why it is you need to hold on so tightly, and ask whether it's serving you. Does it really make you feel more safe? Or does it just make you a little bit either more limited or a little bit more inflexible? Okay, bringing your attention between the very base of your groin all the way up through a center line that you imagine drawing from the base of your groin all the way up through the middle of your crown. Okay? So depending on what level you're at, facilitating the release of these patterns that aren't compatible with these waves. And if you're feeling sleepy, just let yourself sleep. And then you can just listen to this recording over and over again until you no longer fall asleep. Oftentimes when the frequencies are very high, our spirit self will kick us into sleep so that our active minds are not getting in the way. It allows us to go faster. Mm-hmm. Good. So now being aware of that center channel between the very center of your groin up through your crown. So what I'm doing right now is I'm starting to amplify the frequencies of the purity wave around, and then I'm going to bring them through you. And the reason I'm doing this is so that you can start to become used to these very high frequencies. So when they do actually come through the earth, you're not kind of getting slammed by them. You're on some level, your system recognizes it and can take it in and process it. So helping you with this. So I'm going to be very quiet for the next few minutes. Very good. So now bringing your attention, please, between your belly button and the base of your sternum and your solar plexus. I'm just going to manage your pain bodies a little bit. That was a lot for most of you. Some of you can handle it better. It's helping you manage. There we go. Very good. Everyone take a deep breath in. Hold it for a second or two. Then release it with some sound like yeah. Very nice. Now, if you're interested in deepening your preparation for the purity waves, I highly recommend listening to the Sedona event or to the deep dive on kickstarting synergetic ascension. I'm going to leave you in this space for as long as you'd like. I look forward to working with you on the next GFC.